Alright, y'all. It's happening. But we on a late one this evening. We're having a late one this evening. I had a little bit of a long day. I've had a long work day today, so we're gonna unwind with a little bit of very disturbing American history. We might even do two things. I'm trying to find a good video on the Banana Wars. So if you've never heard of the Banana Wars, let's see. We'll give this a shot.
Be sure to press the notification button. That way, when a new video comes out, you'll be notified. You know how the United States in modern times has been called a bully and a conqueror, taking interest in the Middle East by occupying and exploiting nations that it's already been in? Many have wondered, what happened to the America that minded its own business and when trouble came it liberated those who were under tyranny? Well, here's the thing. The US, one way or another, has always tried to spread its influences in foreign lands. Whether it was invading Canada during the War of 1812, going to war with Mexico in 1846, taking land from the Native Americans, or even quote-unquote convincing Japan to open up trade in 1853. Case in point, the United States was never really isolationist per se. They just want nothing to do with European powers. That being said, one of the more unknown parts of US intervention before the Cold War, before the War on Terror, was Latin America. Latin America and the United States has a very complicated relationship that goes all the way back towards Christopher Columbus and the Spanish settlers. Even to this day, with the election of Donald Trump, things are pretty tense. Back in the late 19th and early 20th century, the United States would do a series of interventions and occupations of several countries in Central America and the Caribbean. There, the locals would not take kindly to US occupation and therefore fought the Americans. This will be known as the Banana Wars, a series of conflicts in Latin America and the Caribbean that would show that the US has always been a kind of nation to spread its influence around the world, militarily speaking, but also economic. Also, keep in mind, because of the various conflicts, this video may go all over the place, so please I ask you to keep track as I will be going from country to country and how they were involved in this.
Okay, so I gotta give you the impetus for why we're doing this. We were watching this video because I brought something up last night that really jarred my brain. A while back, I was having an argument with a family member of mine. Not really an argument, but I was doing that thing that we all do now, which is we go to family events and we basically just wait for the nutjob right-winger to say something insane, and then we try to ignore it for about an hour, and then after about an hour of nonsense, we're finally like, okay, bro, for real? So he had basically brought up how this was around the time that the caravan was coming, and Trump was fear-mongering us about the caravan and how the caravan was this, horrific thing that was going to destroy us all. And my response to that was, well, these people live in, and after a very long time of this, and after Fox News being on while I was there the whole time and all that fun stuff, my response to that was, well, I mean, that, like, there's a lot of reasons why these people are coming, and it's actually not illegal to come to America and seek asylum because you live in a fucked up situation. And basically, his response to me was, well, if it's such a fucked up situation, then they need to change their country, right? They need to figure this out. And I said, well, okay, I get that. But also, like, there's been a lot of actions that we've taken as a country and a lot of foreign intervention that we've done in Central and South America that has led these people to the conditions where they are immiserated by their government, and so they need to leave it and come here. And he cut me off in the middle of my thought, and he goes, oh yeah, I know. It's always America's fault. It's always America's fault. And at the time, this was before I had just fully taken the black pill and decided that these people aren't worth arguing with. And at the time, I was like, wow, I would really like to craft a well-thought-out argument on the types of things that America has done in the past to create the conditions that these people are fleeing, right? And I didn't have a good one at the time. I really didn't. I wasn't well educated on the situation. I just knew that we had been involved in South America specifically, and that our involvement there had led to the conditions that were immiserating these people. And so I just kind of dropped it and I let it go. And when I got home, I looked this up and read about it. And I think that this is a good one to have in your little back pocket the next time that we have a caravan outrage.
To start from the beginning, during the late 19th century was the age of empires. The European powers were on their way to take whatever country they can from Africa and Asia, and the United States, seeing this, wanted a piece of the pie. But they needed a reason for this, and soon would get their opportunity. In 1898, the United States would go to war with Spain because of supporting Cuban rebels against the Spanish, American interests in the Caribbean, and the Spanish being falsely accused of blowing up the battleship USS Maine. Of course, Spain would lose the war and would give up the territories of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines to the US. If you're wondering why the situations such as the hurricane in Puerto Rico or the fact that North Korea threatened to attack Guam was a big deal and how the US got those territories, it's because the Spanish gave it to the United States after their defeat, thus making them US territories, with later down the line making the inhabitants of the islands US citizens. The Philippines is a different story that I will go into in another video. The Spanish-American War was a message to the rest of the European powers. The Western Hemisphere was off limits to them. Despite the Spanish leaving, Cuba, the island, was not all that free. The United States will gain influence in Cuba by occupying the country as well, by establishing a permanent base in Guantanamo Bay. Yes, the same Guantanamo Bay that is known for its torture. While Cuba...
And here's the nice thing about Guantanamo Bay. We don't actually own it, so we're not responsible for anything that happens there. That's why we can run a torture facility on those grounds, is because we don't actually... technically own that land, but we also don't technically not own it, and the Cubans don't really own it, and there's this very odd gray area and some sort of treaty that is involved, and so there really is no accountability of what we do there, and neither American or Cuban laws apply.
Cuba wasn't directly a colony of the United States and on paper seemed like an independent country. In reality, Cuba was a puppet of the United States. One of the main exports from Cuba was sugar, and as we all know, sugar is amazing.
Oh yeah, pour that sweet fucking sugar for me. Hell yeah, this is some good ass sugar. Slurp, go, oh fuck, I think I drank too much.
American businesses took the opportunity to buy out many sugar crops and export most of them to the United States. Some of the Cubans did not take too kindly to foreigners taking over their main export and controlling their government, with a few rebellions coming up. The most infamous being the Negro Rebellion in 1912. After poor mistreatment of Afro-Cubans, the Independent Party of Color decided to rise up against the Cuban government. However, this rebellion will be put down by the Cuban Army and the United States Marines. Unfortunately, this wasn't the end of it, as many innocent black Cubans were massacred as repercussions for the rebellion. This was only the beginning of the Banana Wars. In Latin America, many workers in these countries were tired of working in long hours and poor conditions. Because of this, many workers went on strikes, while others made militias and started a revolution in these countries. However, American businesses in these countries had interest in them. Because of this, companies such as the United Fruit Company went to the American government to ask for their support in order to stop these uprisings. The US government...
So in case that was unclear, the dynamic was, hey, we're a big fruit company. Our main good is bananas, in this case. And we need to have cheaper goods so that Americans pay cheaper prices. And so they petitioned the federal government to stop all of these workers' uprisings in Central and South America that were pushing for better conditions on plantations, actual like real work hours, actual wages, benefits, that sort of thing, from the massive employers in these regional areas where they were producing fruit. But in this case, it's colloquial to call it the Banana Wars, but it's really just fruit in general. And so Dole and the United Fruit Company went and petitioned the federal government to crush these uprisings and make sure that the rule of law was upheld in these situations, so that they could continue to export to us extremely cheap fruit. The direct line for this, and the direct correlation that this has to modern American policy, is I would imagine that these same conversations were had about oil in the Middle East.
Agreed and sent the U.S. Marines to the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Nicaragua, Honduras, and even Mexico. President at the time, Theodore Roosevelt, thought this was a good way to spread American ideals and democracy through the region. American involvement in Panama goes all the way back as far as 1856 with intervening during the Watermelon War. Yes, that was also a thing as well. Jeez, what's with everyone going to war over fruit? The Americans supported Panama's independence from Colombia in 1903. That being said, the US still had interest there, mainly due to the construction of the Panama Canal, which allowed a faster route between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. That being said, Panama didn't see much bloodshed compared to other nations during the Banana Wars. The US would make several attempts to take over the Dominican Republic in 1903, 1904, and 1914, with mostly naval bombardments. However, it wouldn't be until 1916 where they conquered the island, with American Marines being stationed there. The Dominicans, not liking the idea of an occupying force, some would rise up against the Marines. However, due to the Marines having superior weaponry, the rebellions were put down. It wasn't until the election of Dominican President Horacio Vazquez where he made an agreement with the US that allowed the US Marines to leave the island. The Central American country of Nicaragua will go through a similar process, with the US occupying the nation and Nicaraguan rebels fighting against the US Marines. However, unlike the Dominican Republic, the rebels here would actually be a pain for the US military, with the US withdrawing from the nation in 1933. Honduras would actually be a puppet for American fruit companies after they supported our coup against the leader of Honduras, Miguel R. Davila, and appointed the brutal Manuel Bonilla, as they would exploit the Honduran workers and export them.
This is an extremely frequent occurrence in American foreign policy decisions. We have somebody that is in power that we do not like, for whatever reason. They're in power, and so the way that they're running the country makes their goods expensive, or the way that they're running the country means that they want to get off of they want to take their or they want to socialize their natural resources, or they want to move into a situation. You know, they're a big supplier for America, and they want to move into a more social democracy type setup where workers have better rights, workers have actual meaningful power, and we go in and we overthrow that leader that we don't like. An example of this is Gaddafi. We overthrow that leader that we don't like, which and Saddam Hussein also, who may be a bad person and may be horrible and may have done things that are not good, of course, but the only time that we get involved is after all of those things have happened, and now the reason that we're there is because it's actually affecting us. It actually hurts the price of goods in our country, or it is sending the wrong message about workers' rights or against capital, and so we get involved and we overthrow these people. This has happened for, I don't know, 200 years.
The main fruit, bananas, towards the United States. These companies will hire mercenary groups to keep the populace in line. This is where the term Banana Republic would come from. No, not the store, basically a country that's controlled by foreign businesses. As many of you know, the US and Mexico has a very complicated relationship that goes all the way back towards the independence of Texas. In 1910, after anger toward the Mexican president General Porfirio Diaz, the Mexican Revolution began. With the Mexican nation in chaos and plenty of refugees coming to the United States, the US government thought of the next best solution.
Build that wall, 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 build that wall. Build that wall! Build that wall!
Nah, instead, the US put troops across the border and fought with both government and rebel troops, with the United States even shortly occupying the Mexican province of Veracruz in 1914. However, the conflict escalated when Mexican revolutionary Pancho Villa attacked the town of Columbus, New Mexico in 1916. With that, the American government sent in the US Army led by General John Pershing to find Pancho Villa, as the US will occupy the northern part of Mexico. For those who don't know, Pancho Villa was basically the Osama bin Laden of his day, and like Osama bin Laden, the US sent army to find him with no success. I guess some things never change. Also didn't help, this also took...
We should stop there. The Osama bin Laden thing, I don't think he's going to make this point because it doesn't apply to Pancho Villa, but Osama bin Laden was one of the main, I mean, you can go and Google this, he was one of the main, what we called freedom fighters in the Afghan wars against the Russians. We funded him to the tune of millions of dollars and an ungodly amount of weapons so that he could fight back against the Russians and keep the Russians out of the Middle East, because that would have hurt our oil interests. And then we turned around after he decided screw you and mastermind 9/11. We turned around and hunted him down like a dog. And as a matter of fact, we had him in like 2002. We knew exactly where he was. We had an exact location on where he was at, and we could have gone and gotten him. He was in, I can't remember if it was Afghanistan or Pakistan at the time, but he was there, and we knew he was there. We could have gone and gotten him. And we did not. We did not act on that intel because shock and awe wasn't over yet, and we hadn't fully toppled the regime in Iraq, and capturing Osama bin Laden so early in the process would have caused people to be like, wait, what the fuck are we doing? Like, hold on. You caught Osama bin Laden, we got his ass, but you still wanna invade Iraq, where he's not even at? You still want to fuck with Iran? You still want to fuck with Afghanistan? But we got the guy. And that would not have gone over well. So we let him go. He got away. There were a couple of days there where we could have got him, and he got away.
Place the same time as the First World War, and the Mexican government was supported by Germany. Germany promised Mexico if it were to join the war on its side and destruct the United States, it would give back the territories of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona that Mexico lost during the Mexican-American War. As you can imagine, most Americans did not take this lightly, and it led to America entering World War I. Overall, the US would withdraw their troops from Mexico in 1919. While not being a Latin American country, Haiti experienced its fair share of the Banana Wars as well. During the early 1900s, Haiti was an unstable country going through 6 presidents in 6 months. There would be a wide number of militias called cacos that would fight among each other, and some of the fighting spilled into the border with the Dominican Republic. With the US occupying the Dominican Republic at the time, this wouldn't go so well, as American President Woodrow Wilson wanted to protect American interests there, so he would order the US Marines to take over Haiti. And while the US did bring order to Haiti, with it rebuilding infrastructure, schools, and irrigation, and even ousting dictator Vilbron Guillaume Sam, it did however bring misery to the inhabitants. Haiti would probably
And that would be the first of many times that we would bring misery to the inhabitants of Haiti, because following the earthquake, the Clinton Foundation, and Hillary and Bill Clinton specifically, invested millions of dollars into rebuilding Haiti and used it to launder an insane amount of money. Not to mention foreign money was also laundered into Haiti to go into the Clinton Foundation and pay the Clinton and be put in the Clintons' back pocket. Haiti has been completely exploited by American imperialism for at least a century.
Get the worst treatment of any of the nations occupied by the US, since most of the Haitians were black. Many of them had to suffer the racist attitudes and laws that were brought by the US. With the US establishing segregated areas from black Haitians, taking land from black Haitian farmers, and many of the rich neighborhoods in Haiti were taken by white Americans, leaving many Haitians in poverty, and even treating the Haitians like dirt in their own country. Heck, even some white Haitians, such as the ones of German descent, were treated with humiliation as well. Because of the anti-German sentiments because of World War I, many German Haitians lost their land, and some were even kicked out of the country. Angered by these transgressions, the militias that fought among each other decided to put aside their differences and fight the US. Various guerrilla raids would be conducted onto the US Marines, however the raids weren't as successful as they thought they would be, and in the end the US Marines came out on top. Haiti would be occupied until 1934, when President Franklin D. Roosevelt would withdraw troops from the island. So what ended the Banana Wars? The Great Depression. The Depression had a huge impact on the American economy that the companies that exported these products were in big trouble. Not to mention, the US government lacked the funds to keep these troops in these nations. Also, unlike his cousin Theodore, FDR wanted to enforce his good neighbor policy, which he wanted to improve relations with Latin America. Even though the US would come back to interfering with these nations during the Cold War, just ask Cuba. And even today, there's still a rocky relationship between the US.
So there's been a massive change in United States leadership over the last 100 years, right? I mean, here they're faced with the situation of export imperialism across the entire southern hemisphere, and overthrow governments, put down workers' movements, basically destroy leftist movements and the proletariat throughout Central and South America. But but in the Great Depression, the government was willing to be like, oh shit, we don't have the money for this shit. We'll have to get back to this later. And they pulled back and brought all these people home and called it a day, right? We are in the middle of a depression right now. And we're not slowing down on this shit. We're not slowing down on our involvement in the Middle East. We're not slowing down on our involvement in Iraq and Iran, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, any of it. And it just goes to show that, like, we have internalized this idea of just infinitely spending money and infinitely just continuously invading other countries and interfering in other people's governments with seemingly no consequences.
US in these Latin American countries. So what's the point to show? That the US taking interest in occupying different countries is nothing new. It's been happening for a long time, with the wars in the Middle East being the new banana wars. But instead of bananas, it's oil and other material as well.
Well done, sir. Okay, now I started watching something that we mentioned the other night, and I figured it'd be good to watch with you guys. Gotta go to my history though. Where the hell is that? Yeah. Okay. So this one's a little bit of a higher production quality because it's done by Vox. But we talked about this the other night while we were watching the John Oliver clip. There has been a total of one coups, successful coups in American history, on American soil. Just one. In our 300-year history, people have risen up and murdered the government and taken over. And this is the story of that.
For a long time, if you went to the library in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Hold on. I got it playing twice. There we go.
For a long time, if you went to the library in Wilmington, North Carolina, there was one thing you weren't allowed to research.
We were refused. We were rejected by the librarian.
When I asked about or inquired about 1898, they wanted to know why.
I was told that yes, they had something, but they kept it under lock and key.
The story of Wilmington in 1898 still isn't widely known.
What happened here on what's now just this empty patch of grass would radically change racial politics in North Carolina.
This is the story of an American election, but also of something we don't usually find in American history: the violent overthrow of a democratically elected government. In the late 1800s, Wilmington, North Carolina was the state's largest city. It had a majority black population, and historians today describe it as a rarity in the post-Civil War American South.
Wilmington, prior to November 1898, was what the New South could be at the cusp of the 20th century.
There was an unusual degree of black prosperity.
In Wilmington, there were successful black entrepreneurs, doctors, teachers, but also black elected officials. And for a time, that was true throughout the state. Take a look at the politicians on this poster of the 1889 North Carolina House of Representatives. Here at the bottom are black Republican representatives, some from Wilmington. North Carolina also sent 4 black Republicans to the U.S. Congress between 1875 and 1899.
I'm actually fascinated by the concept of Reconstruction's failure. There are a lot of people that say that if Abraham Lincoln had lived, the country would look incredibly different. And that's not because Abraham Lincoln is some sort of paragon of like moral greatness or something. It's just simply because after he died, the impetus to continue with the goals of Reconstruction was basically destroyed. And so Reconstruction was neutered very, very early on. That's what led to Jim Crow and violating, black people's voting rights in this country and all that kind of stuff, is because Reconstruction kind of fell apart. And I'm fascinated by the idea that Reconstruction might be the most important, after the Civil War, Reconstruction might be the most important event in American history for the majority of the people who are alive today. And yet, we don't really talk about it that much. We don't really teach our kids about it that much. We don't really talk about it in schools that much. It's fairly uncovered.
Democratic and Republican parties of 1898 in many ways occupied opposite parts of the political spectrum than they do today.
Most African Americans were voting for the Republican Party, and the Democratic Party was white voters almost exclusively. White supremacy was the central focus of the platform for the Democratic Party.
Okay, there we go. We did it. We found it. We found an overlap. We found the dumb Republican take overlap that we needed to find here, and there it is. So yes, at the turn of the century, 130 years ago, the Democratic Party was a white supremacist party. That is absolutely true. Dinesh D'Souza has nailed us to the wall. Unfortunately, a realignment took place in the 20th century where the parties flipped.
Republicans in North Carolina were successful in part because of a third party called the Populist Party, made up of mostly white farmers fed up with the tough economic times. North Carolina.
Okay, they're kind of whitewashing that a bit. They're whitewashing that a little bit. Because the Populist Party at the turn of the century was actually damn near a communist party. I mean, damn near an actual American Communist Party. So they're kind of skipping that little detail, but they were damn near an American Socialist Party, Communist Party that was fairly anarchist. These are the people that pushed, obviously, several decades later, these are the same sort of people that pushed FDR to run for president, and FDR, literally a person of privilege and a rich person at the time, FDR basically went to all of his rich buddies and went, look, I can raise taxes and take this money from you, or they're going to come get it. These people are going to come and take it from you, and you're not going to like the outcome of that. So you can either be on board with the fact that I'm going to raise taxes and we're going to make life at least okay for the regular working people in this country, or they are going to knock down your door and take that shit, and I won't be here to protect you.
Carolina populists joined up with Republicans to form what they called the Fusion Party. And in the elections of 1894 and 1896, the Fusion Party defeated the Democrats in sweeping victories statewide. That meant North Carolina now had a government that shared power between black and white politicians, including a newly elected Republican governor. Together, they moved towards reforms that would favor black Americans and working-class whites.
This was something that the Democratic Party folks were simply not going to accept.
A multiracial government wasn't just a disappointment for Democrats. It was more like a humiliation. They needed a plan to take back control of the state in the next election. So party leaders like Furnifold Simmons, future U.S. Senator, Charles Aycock, future North Carolina governor, and this man, Alfred Moore Waddell, came up with one: to beat the Fusion Party by luring white populist voters away from their alliance with black voters. Wilmington, with a large black population and a local fusion government in power, would be a focus of their campaign. The state Democratic Party handbook for 1898 laid out their goal: consolidate the white vote by stoking white anger and resentment. It said, "This is a white man's country, and white men must control and govern it." Their most effective tool was the media. One of North Carolina's biggest newspapers was a Democratic Party mouthpiece. It ran racist political cartoons throughout 1898.
Not everybody was literate in 1898, but to see a political cartoon of the type that ran You may not be able to read it, but you know exactly what it means.
Many of the cartoons were centered on the threat of Negro rule, even though the fusion government.
This is a very crass, very white supremacist direct version of they're coming for the suburbs, folks. Antifa. If you elect Joe Biden, then they're gonna bring low income housing to the suburbs. They're gonna bring low income housing to your neighborhood, and you won't be safe, and your property values will go down, and all that shit. This is a very low rent version of that.
Was mostly white. They also played up another fear.
Black men threatening white women became a theme. White men need to do all that they can to protect white womanhood.
Yep.
This was all part of North Carolina Democratic strategy, but it echoed the national racist rhetoric of the time. In one speech that Democrats printed in a Wilmington paper, a prominent Georgia writer named Rebecca Felton said,
"If it takes lynching a black man a day to protect white womanhood, I say lynch."
Her speech prompted a Wilmington black man named Alex Manley, owner of the Black-run Daily Record newspaper, to respond with a column. He made a simple observation that, at the time, was shocking.
That white women who had liaisons with black men did so voluntarily and enthusiastically.
What a king! What a king! Hey, fuck you, buddy. They love this shit.
Wrote, "Every Negro lynched is called a big burly black brute, when in fact many were sufficiently attractive for white girls to fall in love with them."
Manley pretty much said, in a nutshell, sometimes white women choose to be with black men.
Manley's editorial became another tool for Democrats. Newspapers reprinted it, called it a horrid slander, and ran comments about it on a daily basis. It was just a few months before the election, and white voters were angry.
Again, this is playing out again.
By the time the election rolls around on November 8th, black voters, Republican voters, had been thoroughly intimidated here.
By all accounts, the elections of 1898 were a sham. The Democratic Party had a paramilitary group called the Red Shirts. They attacked and blocked black residents.
Very much like they have the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys and the like douchebags that walk around, the Kyle Rittenhouses of the world, the douchebags that walk around with their automatic weapons and scare protesters. Same shit.
From voting. At a rally just before the election, Alfred Moore Waddell provoked the crowds. He said, "Negro office holding ought at once and forever be brought to an end, even if we have to choke the current of the Cape Fear River with carcasses." The votes were counted, and the Democrats won.
Democratic candidates won every seat they had a candidate up for election in.
But some local fusionist politicians remained in power because their seats hadn't been up for re-election, like the white Republican mayor and the Board of Aldermen. And of course, the election did nothing to undo the economic power black folks held in the city. The Democrats had won the election, but their goal of total white supremacist control remained out of reach.
And so they engineered what was essentially a coup d'etat.
The day after the election, at a gathering for white men in Wilmington, the Democrats unveiled a document called the White Declaration of Independence. It contained an ultimatum. Cynthia Brown, whose descendants were in Wilmington back in 1898, is a historian at her church where there's a preserved copy of the declaration from the next day's newspaper.
"We will no longer be ruled and will never again be ruled by men of African origin."
They would strip black men of voting rights. They would give white men a large part of the employment heretofore given to black men. And as for Alex Manley, "We demand that he leave this city forever within 24 hours. The next morning, hundreds of white men marched to the offices of the Daily Record. Manley was gone. He had fled to save his own life. They set the Daily Record building on fire. This is where it once stood.
Once the white leadership destroyed Alex Manley's printing press, they destroyed one way in which the African American community in Wilmington could organize itself and keep itself informed.
At City Hall, the mayor and Board of Aldermen were forced out.
There's 200 armed men in City Hall at the time. They didn't do it of their own free will. And as they resigned, a new member selected by the Democratic Party was voted into office.
Waddell, who once threatened to fill the Cape Fear River with black bodies, was the new mayor of Wilmington.
Damn.
Meanwhile, the mob had grown to about 2,000 men, and the violence spilled into the streets. In these photos, X's mark where the first black residents were killed.
The stories are that they were dumped into the river, and there are varying stories about how many people were killed.
I see 40 to 60 clearly as fatalities as a result of the violence, but I think it was higher.
Many black residents hid for days in the swamps and the wooded cemeteries in the city, including Cynthia's great-grandmother. And thousands of other residents fled Wilmington, never to return. Shortly afterward, Democrats printed booklets celebrating a glorious victory, and in the newspapers depicted black residents as the instigators.
This image is a gross misrepresentation of what actually happened during 1898. You know, what you see is African American men with guns, not white men with machine guns.
The city never regained its black majority population. Jim Crow laws like literacy tests and poll taxes that prevented black people from voting were immediately enacted, and Wilmington's spirit of black opportunity was crushed. Black political representation in the state was over. It would be 90 years until North Carolina elected its next black congressmember.
Wilmington did a really great job of covering up a very dark past for a very long time.
Over the years, the textbooks on North Carolina's history have struggled to accurately describe what happened in 1898. This one from 1933 says the situation was unfortunate for both races. And this one from 1978 doesn't have that much more detail. But they both praise Charles Aycock, a politician who helped perpetrate the riot. They say he had a keen mind and a kind heart, and that, in fact, he was one of the best friends that the colored people had in the state.
It's a legacy that North Carolina has yet to fully undo. The names of the perpetrators are on Wilmington's school buildings and city parks. But the legacy is also...
So, dude, just imagine for a moment. Just take a minute out of your own world and imagine for a moment being a black person growing up in Wilmington, North Carolina, right? And maybe you don't know about this because they clearly do a terrible job of teaching it to children or making anybody aware of it. But let's say you accidentally YouTube algorithm hole your way into this video. And you just go, holy shit! There's statues and schools and street signs and fucking government buildings that bear the names of people who could have slaughtered or had a hand in slaughtering my great-grandparents' community. And we are lionizing them in the public square. It's fucking nuts.
So bigger than those names. Turn on the news, and the state's long history of political suppression echoes.
And we turn to a strict new voter ID law in North Carolina. Racial gerrymandering and a push for new voting maps.
The court says the Republican-led legislature redrew congressional districts along racial lines, violating the Constitution.
There's a tremendous amount of intimidation that is still felt by the black community.
It doesn't have to be mass mayhem and violence in the streets.
The strategy shifts towards designing state laws in such a way that you could exclude blacks from voter participation.
The subliminal pursuit of continuing the White Declaration of Independence.
And if you don't see it for what it really is, it can happen all over again.
Insane. And this is the context, right? This is the context that we have to keep in mind when we talk about black people's experience in America. Like, imagine, right? Like, imagine. It's like what we were saying the other day about, like, or I think it was yesterday, what we were saying about, like, these people are living in a colony. They are colonists in a nation that continues to tell them that they are citizens with the full rights of other citizens, when in reality their entire lived experience is, wow, that's a statue of a guy that probably had a hand in running my great-grandmother out of town. Oh, wow, that school's named after a guy that probably murdered that dude over there, his great-grandfather. Oh, wow, we have black leadership in this city, but they burned the fucking newspaper building down and then murdered most of the government, and now that's not the case anymore, and it took nearly 100 years for us to re-elect more black people in this country. I mean, I can't even imagine that being my experience. I mean, I can't even imagine that being, I can't even imagine that being a thought that I have to have on a daily basis. You know, black people have to walk through this country all the time. Jon Stewart makes this point absolutely brilliantly. Black people have to live in a country where every major city has a Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, but also a Robert E. Lee High School. I mean, it lionizes all of the worst shit that we have ever done to black people. It just lionizes it. It's fucking insane. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. Let's stop watching Vox shit. You're watching Fox News, you just don't know it. Yeah, true. Let's see if there's any fun shit to watch about anything that's happened recently. What do you think? I gotta go to my news section here. Man. Labor Day could launch new spike in COVID cases. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Oh, yes, this is current.
President Trump is pushing back on allegations that he mocked members of the military who sacrificed their lives for the United States. According to a
Trump adamantly killed.
It was a terrible thing that somebody could say the kind of things, and especially to me.
The president allegedly made the comments while in France in 2018 as part of his reason for not visiting a cemetery near Paris where American troops are buried. According to the report, Mr. Trump canceled the trip because he feared his hair would become disheveled in the rain.
10 sources, 10. Went on the record debunking these lies.
The White House insists the cemetery visit was canceled due to weather, but backlash to the bombshell story brewed quickly.
My son Matthew is not a loser.
Gold Star families rebuked the president in a new ad, and retired Major General Paul Eaton posted this direct message.
You're no patriot. Let me tell you about a patriot. My father was killed in Vietnam.
The article also said that when Senator John McCain died, President Trump told senior staffers we're not going to support that loser's funeral.
Oh God,
Mr. Trump insisted he never called McCain a loser, but he has a long...
Dude, does anyone deny? I mean, honestly, can anyone believe that this guy didn't say that shit? He basically said it. I mean, he said, like, I like my soldiers, or my war heroes not captured, or whatever the fuck he said.
History of publicly criticizing the late senator.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
The
president weren't captured. Oh shit. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people who weren't captured. Fucking amazing. There's no way that he didn't say that shit. Not that it matters. I mean, it doesn't matter at all. But there's no way that he didn't say that shit. Let's see what else there is. Oh, Jesus. Yikes. Oh, yeah, okay. Let's do this. We'll do the highlights of this, I think. Yes. Let's do it. Oh, sorry.
It has to start with you as our leaders. My words are not intended as political fodder. Stop the words of hate.
So given his words, what do you think your role tomorrow will be and should be?
Well, I'm just going to pay my respects. I'm also going to the hospital to see the officers and some of the people that were so badly hurt. And I really look forward to going. I would have done it even sooner, but I didn't want to disrupt any more than they already had disruption. But I look forward to going to Pittsburgh tomorrow.
You said over the weekend you might even tone up your rhetoric. The media today seized on it at Sarah Huckabee Sanders' press briefing. They're pointing fingers at you, saying, look, you could do more. You're the leader of the free world. What do you say to that?
Well, you know, I did a rally, and I said, in fact, I was thinking about canceling it. I also did the young farmers, and it was great doing that. And then I had a rally afterwards. And then I said, you know, you make them too important if you start canceling. I remember Dick Grasso wanted to get the stock exchange open as soon as possible. He did a great job. And other things. Once you start doing that, once you cancel, so you're doing a rally, and rallies are meant to be fun. Rallies are meant to be everything. And I said, tone it down. And then you saw the group saying, no, don't tone it down. Don't tone it down. So we had a great rally in Illinois for some great people. And frankly, I think that's probably the way it should be. You should go about your life. You can't let these people disrupt any more than they already have, which is disgraceful. What he did is disgraceful. You can't let it happen. As far as what the rabbi said, I agree with him.
The word nationalism has taken on for the left this connotation of fueling anti-Semitism, hate, even violence. Do you think that is fair, and do you want to further clarify what...
Mr. President, you are an excellent human being in every way, and could you please explain to the people at home who don't understand why you're an excellent human being, just what is so excellent about you? Like she's supposed to be a journalist in some way, right? And she's just being his press secretary. That's phenomenal.
Nationalism means to you?
To me, I don't have to clarify. It means I love the country. It means I'm fighting for the country. I look at two things: globalists and nationalists. I'm somebody that wants to take care of our country because for many, many years, you know this better than anybody, our leaders have been more worried about the world than they have about the United States, and they leave us in a mess. Whether it's the wars, whether it's the economy, whether it's debt, whether it's all of the things that they've done, including putting in the wrong Supreme.
This shit right here works, right? I mean, he's right. He is right in a material way. Like, yes, the last 3, 4, 5 presidents have done nothing but just wage war overseas and not help the people who are here. He's absolutely right. He hasn't done a fucking thing about it, but he's absolutely right.
Supreme Court justices, and we've really put 2 great ones in. No, I'm proud of this country, and I call that nationalism. I call it being a nationalist, and I don't see any other connotation than that. Now, as soon as you make any statement nowadays with the political correctness world, they make a big deal. I'm not a globalist, but I want to take care of the globe. But first, I have to take care of our country. I want to help people around the world, but we have to take care of our country, or we won't have a country, including we have to take care of our country at the border.
When you hear people use the phrase anti-Semitism to describe anything connected to you, you have a Jewish daughter.
She just gave away the game. Dude, she totally just gave away the game. He said globalists like 4 times, and she goes, Listen, when you hear people say anti-Semitism, she gave away the game. That's what he's doing. He's doing anti-Semitism with the whole globalism bullshit. And she's like, oh yeah, no, that's dog whistling for Jews. And so let me just address that real quick and and polish this up a little bit.
You have grandchildren who are Jewish. What's your reaction to that?
And I just received an award from the state of Israel, from Bibi Netanyahu, thanking me because I moved as you know, the embassy to Jerusalem, making Jerusalem the capital of Israel. And I just did that. Now, how many presidents said they were going to do it and they never did it? Many, many presidents. I won't go over the names, but I can tell you every one of them. I can tell you what every one of them said. I just opened up, and we opened it up. We didn't just name it. You know, it was going to take years and years to build, and it was going to cost over $1 billion. I opened up a beautiful building for $400,000, already opened, saved well over $1 billion. And it's opened after 4 months.
And you were criticized for that, too. You were criticized at the time, I believe, for being too pro-Palestinian, and now you're criticized on the other side.
And in fact, this horrible human being, this terrible...
How could he have been criticized for being too pro-Palestinian? What person in this country would have criticized him for that? Honestly. There is no Palestinian, lobby in this country. There is nobody who's in... like speaking for the Palestinian people in any sort of meaningful way. How would he be accused of being too pro-Palestinian? That's insane.
Person that did the shooting, he was not a Donald Trump fan because he said I was too close to Israel. So that seemed to be his reasoning. So I will tell you, I'm going to show you right after this, I'm going to show you the most beautiful plaque. It just came. They must have known you were going to be doing this interview, but it was sent by Bibi Netanyahu thanking me for opening the embassy in Jerusalem, which, as you know, is like the biggest deal.
The phrase enemy of the people, another phrase that's been seized upon by many in the media, many on CNN, but not just CNN. There was a woman who was just on CNN a short while ago saying that you have radicalized more people than ISIS. That was CNN today.
Well, that must be some kind of a sick woman. When I say...
Okay, I don't mean to be this guy, because I'm certainly not like a... like an aficionado on fashion or anything, but what the fuck are those boots?
The enemy of the people. I'm talking about the fake news, and you know it better than anybody. You have news out there that's so fake,
Fox News
and I can do the greatest thing ever. North Korea, as an example, we would have been going to war. Normal would have been going to war with North Korea. I think President Obama would have gone to war if he had an extra year, he would be in right now a war with North Korea. He told me it was by far, and I'm not knocking him for this, he said it's by far his biggest problem. Look at what we've done. And yet, when they talk about North Korea, they say, what's taking so long?
But you know they're going to be biased.
Yeah, but you know this has been going on for 70 some odd years. Yeah. And they say, I left.
She's like his success coach. She's like, oh, dude, you know people are going to doubt you. There's always going to be haters out there, bro. There's always going to be haters. You can't listen to the haters, man. You gotta keep pushing. You gotta grind. You gotta get up and grind, baby. Because, the haters are out there trying to take you down. That's what she's doing.
I left Singapore, where we had our meeting, where we really had a very good meeting and a good relationship, 4 months ago. They say their new line is, what's taking so long? I say, we have plenty
But how does it help expand your base to call them the enemy of the people? How does it help America heal in times like this?
It's a very good question, very fair. Before we finish, though, so we've done a great job with North Korea. Then they said, we can't get them on anything because the sanctions are on. We got everything. There's no missiles. We got our hostages back. We have the remains coming back, everything. So now they said, he met. The new line is, I met.
Now, listen to this. Expecting they're going to be fair to you?
No, but think of it.
Listen, bro, these are just haters. They're just haters, man. Why? Come on. You can't listen to haters. Don't let them knock your hustle.
Going to be fair to you.
Laura, think of it. I met. Okay, that's their new line. I shouldn't have met. So, and if you go back to before I got here, it looked like we were going to war, a bad war with North Korea. So,
but I was here with Reagan. I worked for Reagan. They called him stupid, dumb, slept in the afternoon, incompetent, a warmonger, and he always kind of He was like, he had steely, but he was...
but he didn't have social media.
Yeah, that's true.
He would have fought back. He didn't have social media. When it's my form of telling the truth. Here's the problem. We have a lot of supporters. You know that better than anybody. All you have to do is look at your ratings, okay? But you know it better than anybody. Those supporters know that they're lying. I watched Meet the Press this weekend. Everything was so falsely putting words in people's mouths.
Are they trying to hobble you in the midterms because you're the best closer for this party? That's what the Republicans are saying.
They're going out of their way, and I'm getting 25 and 30,000 people to these rallies. Nobody's ever seen it. There has never been anything. This isn't bragging. There has never been anything like what's happening. I went to Illinois. You had to see a Boeing 747, this massive hangar, packed, and they had to use a second hangar for the overflow. Nobody's seen anything.
Yeah.
And always, look what happened for Ted Cruz, who's doing great now. We left Houston. He's now doing great. They don't even talk about that race, and his opponent is not very good.
The bomber who sent the letters to the CNN and Democrats was a fan of yours. He obviously also seems insane, completely insane. So what do you say about that? You put bomb in quotes.
Why did she bring that up? Why did she bring that up? What was the impetus for bringing that up? There was a bomber that was a fan of yours that sent CNN and the Democrats a bunch of bombs and letters and shit. Well, she didn't say bombs. She just said letters.
They went crazy over that, too, over the weekend because you used the word bomb in quotes.
Look at it.
Would you like to kind of...
No, look. He was insane a long time before you look at his medical records. He was insane for a long time. Bernie Sanders had a fan who shot a very good friend of ours, Steve Scalise, and other people. He was a total maniac. Nobody puts his name in the headline, Bernie Sanders in the headline with the maniac.
In fact, Nancy Pelosi said, do not politicize this, back at the time.
I was in the headline of the Washington Post, my name associated with this crazy bomber.
Yeah.
Trump bomber or something. But I was in the headline when they got him. They didn't say...
This is amazing, because the only way that he can process political events in any way, the only way that he can process historical events or political events or anything that ever happens in the history of America is through the lens of the media. It's the only way that he can understand what's going on. So he looks at it and goes, there was a headline with my name in it. There was a headline, and I don't like that. But when it was Bernie Sanders, they didn't even put his name in the headline. You can look at your ratings, at your Fox News ratings, and you can see what my support is. Like, it's literally the only language that he speaks. It's literally the only way that he can comprehend anything, is like, how many people watched it, what did the headlines say, what was the, who wrote it. It's the only way that he can put anything into context. It's fucking amazing.
Bomber found, they talked about Trump in the headline. Now, they didn't do that with Bernie Sanders when he had. They didn't do that with the Democrats when other people came out. They didn't do that with President Obama with the church, the horrible situation with the church. They didn't do that. They put my name in the headlines.
Wait. Hold on. Did he just try to say that the guy... I mean, maybe I misunderstood that, but did he just try to say nonchalantly that that Dylan Roof, the dude who shot up the church in Charleston, was an Obama guy? And they didn't put Obama in the headlines for the Charleston shooting, where the guy literally just walked in, sat and had church with black people for like an hour, and then pulled out a gun and shot a bunch of them? What? Did he just try to make that equivalency?
It's when I say enemy of the people, I'm talking about the fake news, and it is fake.
Which
and the thing is, my people understand. One quick story. So a reporter for the Washington Post does a story that a place that I was doing, an arena, was empty. And he shows a picture. Not a very good crowd, Mr. Trump, something to that effect.
It's the only way that he
and
can
then
process
it turned out that he took the picture 5 hours before the people started coming into the arena. The arena was packed.
Look at her. She knows it. She knows. She's like, wait, hold on. This is not the point. But all you're doing is just talking about how the headline was wrong, or the pictures were messed up, or somehow our media is lying about your numbers. Like, all he cares about, he's like an Instagram influencer. All he cares about is fucking analytics.
Thousands of people outside. They had to retract it. But this is the kind of dishonesty that we have.
Amazing.
Now for more of my interview with President Trump. Can we move to some individual races? Florida, obviously so important to 2020, but important period. Andrew Gillum against Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis, congressman, strong supporter of yours. Over the weekend, you called Andrew Gillum. You referenced him being a thief. What did you mean by that?
Well, the FBI offered him tickets at $1,800 apiece, and he took them. He took a trip with the same FBI agent. What? I guess he was posing as a developer or something. The man, stone cold, took this stuff. I don't even think he should be allowed to continue on with the race.
He responded today by calling you weak. You're howling because you're weak. That's what he said in a tweet.
I haven't heard that one lately. That's okay. Good. That's a change of pace. Look, here's a guy that, in my opinion, is a stone cold thief. And his city, Tallahassee, is known as the most corrupt in Florida and one of the most corrupt in the nation. He's a disaster, and how he's even close to being tied is hard to believe. But Florida can't have. If Florida has a governor like that, and I know Florida better than I know practically anywhere, Florida will become Venezuela. It will be a disaster. And you have Ron DeSantis.
Dude, imagine living in a world where you think it's reasonable to say that Florida, literally the hideout of insane reactionary Cubans and insane reactionary white people, is going to somehow become Venezuela. What a guy. What a guy.
Who is a Harvard, Yale guy. He's had a really terrific, he's a very good person. He's going to be a very...
He's covering up COVID numbers. He's denying people unemployment, so the numbers don't look so bad. Such a great guy.
Be a very good to a great governor. This other guy is a stone cold. In my opinion, he's a thief. How can you have a guy like this? And you just look at his record. Also, look at the job he's done as the mayor of Tallahassee. He's a total disaster.
John James, of course, running for Senate.
Star.
Beto O'Rourke is...
I just realized that this is like old. Oh shit. All right, let's do this. Here you go.
Mr. President, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
On Friday, Ted Wheeler, the mayor of Portland, sent a letter to you saying, basically, we don't want your help. You make matters worse. Saturday, one of your supporters is murdered in Portland by, it looks like, a suspected Antifa individual. And then on Sunday, Wheeler comes out and Biden and essentially tries to blame shift to you for the violence there. Your reaction?
Well, these are terrible and very incompetent people. Portland's been burning for many years. For decades it's been burning, but now it's gotten to a point they don't want to do. I watched the mayor try and get in with these people, and he went to a protest, and he went in there. They almost killed him. If he didn't have security with him, he had 5 security guards, he would have been dead, just like they would have done to Rand Paul, who's a great guy, and his wife, Kelly. It is a disgrace when you look at what's happening. Now, we sent in Homeland Security. The reason we sent them in was to protect.
So, listen, I sometimes wonder, right? I sometimes think about, like, do you think people like Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity, do you think that they know what they're doing? Do you think that I mean, surely they do, right? That they know that they're making a trade-off, that they're literally saying, we're going to sell out the country, essentially, for money. And if that's the case, right, if they know that, which they probably do you think that it's possible that, like, somebody close to these people has occasionally pulled them aside and been like, bro, you know that you're literally creating a hellscape and this is terrible, what's going on here? Do you think they ever think about that? Do you think they ever, like, have any influence from other people outside of their lives where they're like, hey, stop?
Our courthouse, we have a $300 million courthouse, and they wanted to blow up our courthouse or burn it down. Take your choice, blow it up or burn it down, they said. And I said, no, that's not happening. So they wouldn't protect it because the mayor said he doesn't care. So we sent in our Homeland people. They did a great job. Immediately, Homeland Security. Immediately, it was protected. And that's the only reason they were there. I've offered to send in the National Guard. I've offered to send in anybody they want. I could put that out in 45 minutes and it would stop. And I think the people of Portland and the people of Oregon, I know it's a liberal state, considered liberal, they're tired of it. They're tired of having, of living with this curse. They're living with a curse. They say that when you walk through the streets of Portland, this is years and years of burning, and
It's in the last 90 days, it's been really
chaos. It's been horrible in the last 90 days. But no, it's been going on for many, many years. It's like you're in, I won't name the city, but it's a city someplace in the world that's not so good, okay? It's a terrible situation.
The Oregon governor said no one is safe in Donald Trump's America.
Yeah.
They're trying to turn the tables on you
trying.
after months of, they're not really saying.
You see what I mean? She's like, listen, fam, they're just haters. They're just haters. They're trying to turn it on you. They're trying to make it about how you're a bad person. What do you think about that? That's not journalism.
Much about the violence.
Right, but they won't ever criticize anybody that really, that's a violent person, frankly, that's violent. They stick up for the violence. They don't, the people that are getting hurt, they don't care about. They don't care about these people. It's a weird thing. It's like warped minds. And for the last 93 days, I've been offering to send in. As you know, they have to take the offer. They have to ask to have help. I've been standing and I've been saying, anytime you're ready, we'll put it out.
What's motivating them, Mr. President?
I think it's a sickness, actually. I think there's a fear. I watched the way they treated this Mayor Wheeler when he was standing there, and I'll tell you how unfair the news is. NBC News didn't show that he was being shouted at and cursed at, and he ran, literally, he had to run for his life because they were going to really hurt him. He had security. If he didn't, he would have probably...
Here's the thing, right? If your only interaction with what's going on in America is turning on Fox News for a couple hours a night, which is a lot of people's reality. I mean, let's be real. That's a lot of people's lived existence. Is they come home from work, maybe not so much in COVID times, but in reality, they come home from work and they go, well, I'll just turn on Fox News and kind of catch up on what's going on because I'm a Trump guy, or I'm a Republican, or I'm a Southerner, or whatever the fuck. I'm somehow in the demographic. And I'll just turn on Fox News for a couple hours and, just determine what's going on in the world. If this is your experience, if this is the only news that you are getting, right? Then of course you're going to vote for Trump. Of course you're going to lose your fucking mind every 5 minutes because you're like, oh, dude, they're burning down a city in America? Holy shit, and these people are out to murder actual politicians? What the fuck? And oh my god, this is... the whole country's falling apart. Of course. Alright, well, that's enough Trump for this evening. That's enough. We've done our best this evening to unpack this shit. I'm gonna go play Civilization with my wife and enjoy my black-pilled mind where I'm done with this shit and I don't care. It's just funny now. So, y'all have a good night. Peace.